Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the news behind the news of Rafkin Tab on Mix 94.7 FM. And I hope that you guys are having a good week so far. This afternoon, I have here with me two young ladies who I've known for a long time. One of them literally from since kindergarten. And Lisa, I don't know if you remember, but I remember you from ASA.
Really?
Yeah, I used to go ASA as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I don't forget faces.
Wow.
So it's great to have you here. I guess we're all grown up, like the Rugrats cartoon. And with that, I have here with me Miss Shanica Romney and Lisa Adams of Say Less Sis. So welcome, ladies, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, listeners.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So can you tell us a bit about yourselves?
You want to go, Lisa?
Floor is yours, sis.
I don't want to go. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shanica Romney. About myself, I'm one of the co-founders of Say Less Sis. A lot of you probably know us for our Swahili slangs. Aside of that, I recently moved back to St. Martin, where I studied in the Netherlands. I studied European Studies, and now I came back home and see how I can contribute to my community in whatever way possible.
Awesome. So, good afternoon once again. My name is Lisa Adams. I am also one of the co-founders of Say Less Sis. I was born and raised here on the island to two Guyanese parents. And I studied at the St. Dominic High School, and then I went away to further my studies in the Netherlands, same as Shanika. I was in the city of Amsterdam, where I completed my studies in creative business. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Interesting. So, Shanika, you said yours was European Studies and creative business. All right. So, with that, before I get, I guess, deeper into that, I'm curious about, your take, some memories of growing up in St. Martin.
Fond memories.
Yeah, I feel like growing up here on the island was fun.
St. Dominic was known as the more like uptight, bougie school.
But we knew better. I don't think it was.
No, to the outside world, that was the perception they had of the school. But to those who were actually in the school, that was not the reality whatsoever.
But it was quite fun. I feel like us at Tennis and Dominic kind of gave us the exposure of the mix between both worlds. So like we had like friend groups that people that had money, and then we had also friend groups that were from different lower economic backgrounds. And I felt like that gave us kind of a unique position of our outlook of St. Martin at the end of the day, especially when you go abroad and you start to study and you realize like a lot of the social issues that you didn't really recognize in high school, now it's like, okay, you really need to tackle something. So I felt like going to St. Dominic really gave us that kind of advantage.
One of my most favorite things about growing up on St. Martin is the whole multicultural aspect of it. So from kindergarten straight into high school, I must say I've always had a unique mix of friends from varying backgrounds. And something that I think we took for granted is the fact that we were exposed to so many different languages, which for me, like, I recognized when I moved to the Netherlands, like, I was quick to pick up things like in Papiamento or Spanish or French when not having any, like, formal training, especially in Papiamento. Like, I had no idea, like, how things are making sense to me as I have no formal training in the language. I do have a lot of friends who have parents that are from the island and maybe subconsciously I've been exposed to the language. I think what also and what also played a very key role in that is the music on the island. Like here on St. Martin, we literally listen to every single thing under the sun. In high school, like I was exposed, of course, to soca, to dancehall, to calypso, but also to rock. Like last night, I had one of my memories, like Paramore. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the band that. That came up and in high school.
Dominic, right?
Exactly. Case in point with the whole very unique mix of being a student of St. Dominic. But I think that was just one of my most favorite parts about growing up on the island, that it's such a unique mix of culture and diversity.
Gotcha. So I'm curious about your take, particularly Shanika, European studies. Why that? Like, what is it about? I guess that program that made you want to study it, and what what do you see as the main takeaway that you have now?
To be quite frank, I was looking for a study that did not involve any kind of math whatsoever. So
did you succeed?
Yes.
There you go.
So when looking through, I was like, it's between that and human resources. I remember specifically, but I remember in a time when I was applying for a college in the Netherlands, human resource was only available in Dutch, and because I went to an English high school, I really had to follow an international program.
Yeah.
And then I found European studies, and I first applied to it at both two institutions. So the one at Maastricht University and the one at The Hague University. But then I opted for the one at The Hague University because I really wanted to be more around my community, my family, quad distance, and so on, at least for the first year. But ultimately, I chose European studies. Quite similar to what Lisa mentioned earlier, was because of the languages. So I had the opportunity to learn like French and Spanish, but also seeing like the program was really broad. So I had the opportunity to learn like public administration, but also business administration. And I really loved having to be able to explore different avenues while studying and not being like in a specific niche.
Gotcha.
But then throughout the years, life happens, you study and you change, you grow up. At the end of my study, because I took a public major as well, but I eventually did my thesis in website optimization. So that's to show you like how broad my study was. It was more so along the side, like my interests, like whatever interests.
So you have a lot of free range.
You do, which is there's pros and cons where that is concerned. Because at the end, especially when you're trying to apply for jobs, it's like, okay, you jack of all trades but master of none, like you could do all of these things, but what
specifically?
Exactly.
But even with that, then do you feel like you were equipped to work as a professional here in St. Martin? Given the study? Yes.
Well, for me, I kind of took a longer route in my studies, so I did not graduate in 4 years. I graduated in 7 years. So I had a study delay, which is something I feel like a lot of students in the Netherlands don't openly talk about as well. But it happens to majority of us that do move to the Netherlands. But for me, I tried to capitalize on my study delay and started working. So I did like 2 internships when usually you're supposed to do 1, because I realized like, okay, because my study is so broad, let me try to get as much experience as possible. So I did 2 internships, and besides that, I was always active with extracurricular activities. So you would find me in Toastmasters. I joined different clubs at schools. In my last 2 years of being enrolled in school, I was part of a student association as well, which really helped me to be more equipped, especially in the professional world. And I felt because I had those experiences, and a lot of recruiters saw like I was someone that was always taking the initiative and really putting myself out there.
You've highlighted leadership qualities.
It was, getting a job after graduating came much more quicker than I expected because of that. So.
Gotcha. And Lisa, in your experience, did you say something you knew you wanted to do immediately, and how was adapting to life in the Netherlands?
So for me, initially, I went to study international business and languages. Similar to Shanica, I really wanted to do something that embodied languages. I think I had to do Spanish, French, and German, if I'm not mistaken. I did that for the first year, but honestly, it was too business-oriented for my liking. We had a lot of economics, and unfortunately, I know you might not agree, I cannot stand economics. In high school, it just was a pain in the butt for me. So then I opted to do something more in the creative field, which is international communication and media, which I have rebranded to creative business. And it was a lot more broad. I had the option to choose between the marketing stream, the communication stream, and the media stream. So for the first 3 years, you were exposed to all 3 of them, and then you needed to select the stream that you wanted to focus on, which for me was marketing. And I think my experience in the Netherlands with studying was similar to what Shanica said. A lot of us go to the Netherlands and think, okay, we're gonna complete it in 4 years, where it's not the reality. And it wasn't so much that I was not exceeding academically, because I think I passed all my classes within one shot. But people tend to not take into consideration the hardships that come with moving so far away from home and experiencing life as a minority in the Netherlands. So for me, that took a toll on mental health in the way that I applied myself and stuff like that, especially because while living in the Netherlands, both my parents got sick. And I was very far away from home, so that was a very tough time for me, which, reflected in the way that I was living my life in the Netherlands. So I had a very unique experience during the total of 8 years up there. But if I could do it all over again, I would not. I would go to the States. I would go to the States.
I understand.
Or somewhere in the Caribbean.
Definitely. Yeah. I would study regionally, actually. That's something that I would love to explore.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something I consider also particularly. It's still a dream too. A dream that would eventually be a plan to study at the University of West Indies.
Definitely.
Because it's one of the best schools.
Exactly.
But, with that, what comes to mind is just the varying factors as far as how we prepare our youth, for the real world. School, like the school system, it did its part, but there has to be an adaptation to the real world. As far as helping students understand what it means to be independent. Yes, your parents also have a role in that, but particularly, if your parents are limited in their experience as well, there's only so much they can do.
Correct.
So as far as preparing, now I see more workshops and stuff before students are sent away, because clearly, students need to learn how to budget. It's something that many have got into serious issues with financially, and then most definitely mental health, because particularly going into a European nation where, as you mentioned, you're a minority. You grew up used to seeing people who look like you all the time, and now there's also the language barrier and so many other factors that can break you.
Correct.
But it's great to see that at least you guys pushed through.
We did. Made it out alive.
You made it back. So what was it like, from after, I guess, your period in school and whatnot, deciding, you want to come back to St. Martin? Did you guys ever feel like you wanted to come back right away? Did you still feel maybe you want to move back to the Netherlands? And, just in terms of the job search and all of that, how has your experience been making sure on that?
Should I start?
To be quite frank, when I first moved to the Netherlands, I told myself I give myself 10 years out there to do, whatever, experience it, graduate, work, get the experience as needed. But over the course of the years, and eventually, especially when Hurricane Irma happened, and I realized how much our St. Martin community up there, especially in the Netherlands, was not as connected or united as we should be. And after, Hurricane Irma for me was a very interesting experience, because I felt that was the one time I saw our community abroad really come together. Usually when you go abroad to the Netherlands, I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but I'll go back to my point soon.
It's all right, go right ahead.
Usually when you go away, one of the first advice that I heard a lot right before I left was make sure you integrate with the Dutch people, and don't be too much around the St. Martin people. You go up, you study, you focus and whatnot. But when I was one of my lowest times in the Netherlands, it was my own people that helped me get back on my feet. It was my own community, my circle of friends, the people that I met throughout studying over there. And that made me realize, okay, no, we have to change this mindset. And just capitalizing, because we did a whole musical chair event where we raised money and so on, and the joy and excitement on our people's faces, and the connection and the bond that a lot of us still have to this day because of that event. I was that's not something we should take for granted or let go. So after that experience, which was 2017, if I'm not mistaken, I was I really want to go back home. I don't know when, but I know it was going to be sooner rather than later. And then with the creation of Sale Assist, it was just everything that's happened in alignment as well. Okay, this is what was needed. And even when I got into my workspaces, I realized like, okay, I have all this talent and knowledge, and I feel like giving it to the people up there in the Netherlands, I felt like it was a waste of my time. I felt like I needed to come back and share it with my people, you know, and feel more content about what I was doing with my job. So I think last year when the whole panini happened, we came back for like 4 months just to take a break from Holland, you know, just to regroup. And being here in St. Martin was such a joy. Like, it was such a relief from Holland.
Understatement of the century.
I would definitely prefer being in a pandemic here than anywhere.
Yeah,
for sure.
Trust me. We were living life. But, you know, being here was like, made us so happy. And even in that moment, I don't think we properly, even for me, I didn't think about moving back home. But then when I went up, I saw a job opportunity, and it was based here in St. Martin. I was like, why not? I applied, crossed my fingers and my toes, and I got the job, and in a month, I left. Like, I packed up everything, and I was like, I bawled because, you know,
of course,
to an extent, Holland raised me, especially, you know, a lot of myself,
You discovered yourself.
I discovered myself in Holland too as well, you know, so it wasn't all bad. But yeah, I was ready. I was ready to pack up and leave.
Yeah. And your take, Lisa?
Well, first, I'd like to start with a disclaimer because most people think that Shanica and I both plan to come back to St. Martin together. And that was not the reality of the situation. It's just that for some reason, our paths are always super aligned. Similar to Shanica, when I moved to the Netherlands, I gave myself 10 years to go up there to study, to establish myself, to develop myself professionally before I decided to either move back to the island or move to another country or island. And honestly, I had no intention of moving back to the island this soon. What was the driving factor for me was the pandemic. As Shanica mentioned, last year we came to the island for, I think it was about 4 months. We arrived in January. We had to leave in March. We extended our ticket. We had to leave in April. We extended again. And then eventually, I think we left at the end of May and arrived there like maybe 1st of June, something like that. And yeah, just being back on the island, being around people that look like me, that sound like me, being in a place that just made me feel like I was in a comfort zone after being so out of place in the Netherlands for such a long time was just a full circle moment that I didn't realize that I needed. And even then, I went back to the Netherlands and I decided, okay, St. Martin is home, but I still wanted to experience something different, something that's a unique mix of my life in the Netherlands, but still with an island twist. So I was actually actively looking for jobs in Curacao, so I can have like a little gap here and get some experience over there. And although I did apply for many jobs, it did not work out. So I decided, okay, hey, let's try my luck and apply for something in St. Martin. And that worked out for me. It was in a field that I really wanted to be in, which is marketing. And I was like, why not? Like, what is stopping me? So I took the opportunity. I moved back home. All of this happened, I think, like in a span of, I want to say 3 weeks. Like, it happened very quick. Like, one moment I was not on the island, but one moment I was in the Netherlands, all my stuff in a box, waiting to ship them down to Curacao. And the next moment, I'm like, okay, I'm booking a ticket to St. Martin. Hey, Dad, I'm coming home, so make room for me. And the rest is history. But honestly, I feel like everything for a reason.
Yep.
Like, I was meant to be here. Moving back here has been so monumental for me. I am genuinely happy.
But, you know, you guys just shared something that's really interesting I didn't even think about, which is, which all of us basically have went through, which is also come back home after being independent. And being back home.
How much will I get into that?
No, because I think that's a matter of, you know, it's like, just as you prepare to leave, preparing to move back home, especially when, you know, you don't have your own house waiting for you, it's another thing to consider.
Exactly.
And because even that is part of your professional development. And
Correct.
you know, many of us, especially now, can then basically share that similar experience where, you know, you come back home to your parents and stuff, but you know, as an adult.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're not just the child that.
It's just like.
So
Mom, if you're
I think a lot of people listening can relate to that,
Definitely.
and maybe have some have had good stories, maybe some not so much. But how has it been too? Even as calling your parents to say, hey, why don't I decide to come back, and maybe maybe you weren't in the plans of the remodeling of the home or whatever. So how is that going for you too?
Let me start for me because I think mine is less drastic than yours. So for me, honestly, that was one of my biggest worries coming back because, like I mentioned, I live in the Netherlands on my own for 8 years. So like the very beginning, I never had any roommates. I didn't have to share anything. It was me, myself, and I, and at one point a dog. That was it. That was all. So coming back home to a full house, because I also live with my mom, my dad, and my grandmother, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be an adjustment. Being so independent, not having to answer to anyone or anything, and coming back home, I'm like, okay, you have to have some level of respect as well, because at the end of the day, you're in their house, so you feel like you have some type of obligation to behave and act a certain way. But honestly, that wasn't the case for me. My parents are very open. They're happy to have me home. I think they're more happy that I'm back and living under their roof than in the Netherlands. So to be quite honest, I haven't had a negative experience whatsoever. Touch wood. So I'm comfortable being back home for the time being.
For me, I wouldn't say my experience is negative. I felt like it was an adjustment on both parties, for myself, but also for my mom. So just similarly to Lisa as well, like when I lived in the Netherlands, my first year I had a roommate, but she was in a bottle. I kept to myself, she kept to herself. And before that year was done, I found my own studio and I've been there. So I've been on my own, for the past 6-7 years. And then coming back, I live with my mom, my brother, and my stepdad. For me, it was an adjustment mentally because I am extremely introverted. Like, people probably see me out and I mentally prepare myself to go out there and, socialize. But when I come back in, I need to be alone. And then moving back, I realized I will go out and socialize. And then when I come back in, I still had my mother to talk to, my brother, And I realized in the beginning it was taking a toll on me. And especially mentally, because I was like, okay, I'm not getting my space. And I'm someone, I could be quite stubborn when it comes to I need my space and I don't care how it affects other people. So I realized, like, okay, I had to come to a compromise, and I also had to sit down with my mother and also explain, like, this is who I am as well. But overall, I felt like with the conversations and with time, I felt like it did get better, but I could definitely relate, especially to the independence part, because when you left, your parents saw you as like this 17, 18-year-old, and when you come back, you haven't grown up in their eyes as yet, and they're still trying to cater to you in a certain way or talk to you in a certain way. And that's something that I really had to nip in the bud and just have those conversations. And sometimes I feel like, especially as a child, you feel like their child, you feel like, boy, I don't know how to navigate this conversation. And sometimes we need to sit down with our parents and have those conversations with them. And I'm really grateful that, my mother was open enough to have that conversation with me and meet me halfway as well. And just like Lisa mentioned, you're in their house, so you still have to have some level of respect. And, there are certain things that how they've been living, you too have to adjust. So, not gonna lie, in the beginning I was a bit stubborn to it all, cause you can't tell me nothing. I was living how I was living. But it comes with the territory. Yeah. That's all I can say. And I have long-term goals too, that where I'm like, there's certain sacrifices that I need to make now in order for me to reach where I need to be in the next coming years. So for sure. For me, it's a give and take now.
And I totally understand. I guess I think on my end, I wasn't there long because I got married and on my own, and I was responsible for somebody else. Yeah. But one of the things that really stands out is really what the description of Say Less is, which is a platform that serves as a safe space to highlight and discuss taboo topics through the means of digital audio. And then you have as well as advocate for the people of St. Martin. So I'd like to get into that a bit more. And but first, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the News Behind the News with Ralph Tab on Mix 94.7 FM. And thank you for joining me on today's program. This afternoon, I have here with me the ladies of Say Less, Shanica, Romney, and Lisa Adams. And just before the break, I read out basically the description, I guess the mission of your podcast or initiative. And one of that, like I stated, is to create a safe space to discuss taboo topics, and really and truly, as we just spoke on, that element of moving back home with your parents as an adult, and then having, certain conversations with your parents, whether it relates to them understanding what your boundaries are, what your goals are, knowing that, you are the one who's mainly responsible for yourself, their contribution is how to say, could be accepted, but it's not mandatory.
Yes.
And there's so many other stuff. So I'm curious about, even in the forming of your podcast, what was your approach like in terms of approaching those taboo topics that make culturally make people cringe?
Our approach was dark humor. Yeah.
Which is accurate. The thing is, being friends for so long, Shanika and I often would sit down and have conversations about everything under the sun. And the time that we created the podcast platform, I think, was a time where podcast was a very in thing. Especially for me, I would spend hours and hours, days on days, listening to various podcasts, ranging from people from all over the world. And then one day we decided, hey, we do this for free in our free time on our kitchen table, talking about different things where other people can relate to. And in the podcast world at the time, there was no one that sounded like us, that looked like us, that can be related to. So we're like, hey, why not give it a go? We have nothing to lose. Ultimately, we were doing it for ourselves, and whoever enjoyed it, then good for them. They're enjoying it, And I think that's the approach we took in starting our podcast platform.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, like Lisa mentioned, a very key thing, which was there was no one out there that looked like us, that sounded like us. And I felt like in the time where we started our podcast, we both were going through things, and I felt like it was low-key a healing journey for us as well. For
it
us
was therapeutic.
Yes, it was very much a space just for us to heal and discuss things openly, because as close as we are, there were things I felt like 5 years ago we would never discuss with each other off the bat. We would go through our things alone, and then have this brave face in front of your friends when you're going back home to cry, So I felt
accurate.
Vulnerable with each other.
So I felt like creating that podcast to kind of developed our friendship even more, because we realized, okay, I can't trust this person to share these feelings with. So, and for you, the question that you asked about how we navigated those topics, like I mentioned, dark humor, but also research as well, because we know that what we experience is just our perspective, and then we used to go online, listen, read up certain things, and really try find a more
concrete and academic.
Yeah, exactly. Academic way of, how we can give out this information. And what we used to do, especially in the beginning of our platform, is that we would, if we knew we had a topic coming up, we would share polling questions on our stories. So we got other people's perspective as well, which for us sometimes was oh, maybe we're a bit ignorant, or that was just our experience, but then there was somebody else who come from the same island who had something completely different, So we really tried to be as inclusive as possible when it came to our podcast.
Okay. And then with that, how you go about determining which topics to choose?
Sometimes it would be more current event, depending on what's popping up, because again, although it's just for us, you have to look at the numbers, especially when we started getting into it. It's like, okay, what are people interested in as well? So you kind of catering for your audience. So we will look at current events, but also it would just be what we feel like talking about in that moment, you know. So it was a mix of the two.
Okay, and then one of the things I'm curious about is, you know, especially given the fact that you guys have been friends for
Donkey
maybe
years.
2 decades.
Donkey years. Yes.
Going on 2 decades. You know, as it relates to speaking on things that even make you uncomfortable, like what would you say are some steps that persons can take, you know, in doing so, you know, overpowering the fear, you know, of touching those taboo topics, whether it's in like in your relationship, in your family, or just especially as a society in general.
As someone who always find it very difficult to vocally like express myself, I would say the first step that you can take is start writing it down. Journaling is so key when it comes to that. So formulate your thoughts and getting it down on paper. And once you can get that done, I think you can take the stepping stone into vocalizing how you feel. I think that will be the first step.
Also, I would add therapy.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that kind of helped with me being a bit more vocal about my experiences. Because going to therapy, I didn't at the time knew I needed it, and I only ended up going because of my study delay. And then I realized like there were so many other issues that was going on that I didn't even know for my own self, you know. So I think therapy really helps with that. And after having, I was like, if I could confide in this random person who don't know anything about me or where I come from,
why not?
You know, like why not confide in someone that looks like me, that understands where I come from, who probably could give a better approach on how to navigate some of the issues that I was going through. So definitely therapy.
I co-sign that 100%. You know, in addition to speaking on taboo topics, creating that safe space, what you also have is, you know, being an advocate for people of St. Martin, which is could be a big task, but of course that's something that can be accomplished in different ways. One of the things that you guys did, which I really appreciate, I think many others did as well, which was during the pandemic when you hosted the Instathon. You know, and you guys raised how much was it? 1,000 something euros.
Yeah, about 1,500 euros.
About 1,500 euros.
Or 1,700. No, 1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, you know, what was the driving force behind that, and what was it like putting it together as well?
How did that go? Okay, so the Instathon came about. Panini happened, and we were trying to graduate, right?
Yeah.
And we were both writing our thesis at that time, but we were locked up, and Lisa lives like an hour and a half away from me, so we spent so back then we used to be on FaceTime all the time, you know, and try to support each other through FaceTime while writing our thesis. But there came a point where I felt like we were so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. And I remember like scrolling through Instagram, and P. Diddy, his live, he had a live going on, and he was like raising money. And I sent it to Lisa. I was like, yo, look what he doing, you know, like all these artists, like why we can't do this for our people. And also during that time I felt like there was like the internet was very like dark for some reason, like there was so much negativity, you know, with the COVID situation. And then I'm also someone, I get really frustrated when I see there's always like negative narratives of St. Martin being posted or highlighted on the internet. There's so many amazing things that happen in our community, and we just are so blinded to it. So I was like, Lisa, you think we could do this? I mean, we got thesis to write, but we could pull this off, right?
Of course, me being me, I was like, of course,
yeah. She was like, yeah, of course. I was like, cool. We don't know nothing about going live, because we never really went live like that. Instantly, so see us Googling, you know, and putting things together.
And it was in the span of like, what, 2 weeks?
We did it, we planned it in 2 weeks while writing a thesis and had an exam. I don't know how we did it. It was adrenaline.
Done.
Yeah.
It was done.
What were some of the things that were featured in it that you could share with?
Well, we had Ralph.
Given History 101, which I
Yeah.
must say was one of everyone's favorite segments on the 2 days. We also had workout tutorials. We had dance tutorials. We had makeup tutorials. We had cooking tutorials as well.
We had public speaking. We had entrepreneurs that came on and, like gave advice for those people that wanted to start their own business as well. We had a DJ segment at the end of both days. So everyone that went through the workshop, at the end, you could have like party. Yeah.
Ended up with a bang. It was a great mix of different things, like creative, academic, and at the end, of course,
Fun.
music, fun.
Yeah, and with that, so you raised about 1,500 euros, and basically, what did those funds go to?
So we donated it to Freegan Food Foundation because at that moment, well, Lisa was very close to them, so she selected that foundation. So maybe you could go more into...
Yeah, so I was familiar with their initiative, both DJ and Yos. I've known for years. They were my musical theater teacher back in high school. And I've been following their initiative since they moved back to the island. And I think at the time they were...
very active.
Very, very active. I think they were one of the few groups in the community that were active. And they were finding food, clothing, shelter, various different things for the people who were in need at the moment. Because as you know, a lot of people lost their job and didn't know where they were getting their last meal. And they were actively out in the community handing out food and stuff like that. So I told Shanica that is a group that I honestly trust, and I know that the funds will be put into what we want it to be put into.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So with that, both of y'all are now back home. One of the things I'm curious about is what are some initiatives that you're looking to start, given that, you're settled.
Settled.
Well, not in a bad way, settled, like,
We know.
But you've reintegrated into the society back home.
Yeah. Should I go? I would say I don't think we're quite settled as yet.
Okay.
I think we're still reintegrating and adjusting. There's a vast difference with living in the Netherlands and here in St. Martin. But we do have a few things planned. But at the moment, I would say, like, right now, we're just trying to regroup. I feel like the past year for us was like everything was like back to back to back.
Yeah, it was very turbulent.
Yeah, and then I felt like we just needed this time to just like let's focus on our career. Like we started this, let's put all our energy into that. And then eventually pick back up with Silas. I must say we do have a team that says not just the two of us. We do have other people on board that help us when we need the help.
Okay, that's great.
But at the moment, it's like everyone is trying to, focus school and jobs and juggling this. And, one of our team members actually moved up to another island as well. So I feel like all of us are now in this space of, trying to readjust and just
figure things out.
Be a bit more stable. But for me, at least for me now,
maturing in the adulting phase.
Yeah. But for me, last year I got accepted into a fellowship, so I'll be leaving to go to the U.S. for a month during the summer, where I'll be focusing more on sales assist and having the assistance of someone abroad who would help, like, oh my gosh. Who would assist with, like, honing down some of our goals and our mission and, getting that extra assistance that we need and just to be focused. I feel like we just need that. So once we get that done, you'll be hearing more from us.
Well, I think that's great because the fellowship you're talking about is YLI, Young Leaders of America Initiative.
Yes.
It was launched by Obama. I think he launched that when he was in Jamaica. 2015, if I'm not mistaken. I'm interested in it also because Charity was a former fellow. So with that, I guess, how was the application period and how do you even find out about it?
So honestly, again, this is why community is the best. So Harsha sent the link and she was like, girl, this looks like something Silas could definitely, be a part of. And she sent it when we were down here in St. Martin. But again, I think that's when we're busy, like trying to do our merch and so on. We had to try to be entrepreneurs when we was on here too.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta.
We were hustling. We were trying to see, what avenues, we could pick up as sellers. And again, sellers is a brand, so
Correct.
you have to see it as a hub. It's not just podcasting, it's like a lot of things that we want to do with it. But to get to the point, Harsha sent it to me. And at first, I was like, I don't know, okay, I'm trying to graduate, trying to, focus. But then I applied, and I must say it was quite a long application process. But after you get over that point, they review your application, and then they invite you for an interview. So you get interviewed by the U.S. consulate in Curacao. And I was just honestly... Any tips if anyone wants to join? I think it's a great fellowship, but I was myself. Even for me, when I got an email and I shared it to Lisa, I was like, oh my God, I was just being myself. And I got accepted. And then because of COVID as well, it was supposed to happen last year, October, but it did not. So it got postponed to this year, summer. But in the meanwhile, what they did was kind of like a hybrid setup. So from January, we had a lot of online courses that I had to take. We also had like groups that I had to join. So I met a few of the fellows already, especially from Latin America. And I must say, it's like doing school all over again because you really have to meet the deadlines. They are very critical about that as well. And right now, too, I recently just met my placement host. And I have another deadline at the end of the month where we have to sit down and go through all our goals and our plan for what I'm going to do for the 4 weeks that I'm there with them. So I must say, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And it really gave me a bit more guidance on like, okay, this is how we were working and we can't anymore. We have to be a bit more strategic. We have to answer a lot more whys, especially when you're an entrepreneur, which is something that I don't think that we did from the beginning. So now it's like, okay, now that I have this knowledge and experience, I can't wait to share it with the rest of my team and build Sailors again from a more sustainable standpoint as well.
I like that you share that because sometimes some of us, we do things out of passion and circumstances, which gives you an edge, but then you realize the need for structure, especially because, having a solid financial footing is necessary. It helps you to understand better, what your end goal is even, because then you're not kind of fishing around for something to hit, but you're steadily working towards that end goal.
Definitely.
So something a bit more on, I guess, your personal experience. I think that is even great that you could share on is the fact that you guys have been friends for very long. It is definitely clear sometimes based on different posts you may see online that friendship could be a struggle for some folks. Figuring out who do you confide in. Who's someone, no matter what happens, will have your back. It's something that we all may have or will experience in life. But frankly, you guys have been successful at it. I'm not saying that, that it's always been rosy, never had any arguments, but I think it's something worth sharing because even as we speak about mental health, having a friend kind of puts you in a better place, in the sense that that even if you are experiencing something in particular by yourself, someone can support you. You're just not alone. So what is the key maybe in maintaining a long-lasting friendship?
Wow.
But what also understanding each other, I think that's one of the main things is knowing what each other's boundaries are, and understand each other, your character, your morals, all of that. Sorry for throwing that in there.
No. It was so nice. At one point, I wanted to get emotional, but
I was waiting for the cry. I was like, "Ooh, Ralph, you gonna make her cry."
No, but I think for me and Shanica, we have a very unique friendship because we are similar in a lot of ways, like scarily and to a certain extent, very annoyingly similar.
For her, it's annoying, but I like it.
So certain things like we finish each other's sentences, as cliche as it is, you know. So I think our friendship has always been quite easy from the beginning. I think I would say from first form. Somehow, like, we were never best friends. We were always in each other's circles. So
Gotcha.
we invite each other to each other's birthday parties because we are only 6 days apart. Well, technically a year and 6 days apart.
Oh, wow. So that's
Yeah, so we're both Scorpios. We're born in November, always in each other's circles. And I think we only truly got close when we moved to the Netherlands. Correct me if I'm mistaken. And it has always generally been a breeze. I can't recall a time where we had any falling outs, any arguments, any negative situations. It's always just been a positive experience with Shanica.
Yeah. I must say, maybe a key would be acceptance. I felt like we accepted each other for who we were from the beginning, you know? Like, it was never like, oh, Lisa, do this. But I mean, like her for that, but you know, and yeah, we never had any falling outs. I feel like we just understand each other, but I do, but I think I've learned to just accept Lisa and understand her for who she is
and hold space for each other.
Yeah, exactly. So like, even if there's moments where like, you know, maybe no, there's not even moments. Like, I'm thinking like, is there any? I don't even want to fish for any negativity because there's none, you know, in our friendship. But I do, like what Lisa said, we do hold space for each other. And even if on our bad days, I'm like, okay, you're having a bad day, take your space. You know, like, and we both have that understanding, like, if we're not in the best space to deal with each other, we take our space and we come back where we know we could handle it or talk about certain things. But overall, it has been so easy.
So with that, you know, having your friendship and also now together building a brand, what's your accountability system like? Because then, you know, you're also how to say, so basically, you know, so you have your friendship, but at the same time now, you know, you're doing something that has more weight to it, in the sense that, you know, again, the fact that you're going to your fellowship, you know, you want to ensure that there's still that sense of professionalism in what you do too now. So how do you maintain that?
Like, for me, so everything I do, especially when it comes to CLSs, even if you see me out here on my own, I always have Lisa in mind, you know. For example, yesterday I was speaking to my placement host and I made it very clear that it's not just me, and that whatever decisions I take, I always run it back by Lisa. There's nothing that I don't do on my own unless, like, I know she can't be reached and I know, okay, this is a decision she would be okay with. And the first chance I get to talk to her, I do, and we discuss it, you know. Also, I do believe that respect. We don't share the same ideas all the time or the same way of how things should be navigated, but we sit down and we talk about it. And there's sometimes I'm like, okay, we're gonna go with your route, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, we're gonna go with your route, and we learn from it as well. And then when it comes to accountability, I feel like we both know. And we both have a certain vision for CLSs. So I know how Lisa works. So for just example, if I know we have a deadline and Lisa has to do her part, I know she gonna get it done. She might get it done in the last hour, but she gonna get it done, you know. But we still maintain that communication of like, boy, you know, I'm struggling with this, or I need your help here. So we have that. I think communication has always been the key.
Transparency, definitely.
Yeah. And just always revisiting. Like, sometimes I notice we go months without discussing, like, what are the goals? Like, we just have a quick meeting and be like, okay, we need to have a meeting about CLSs. What we doing, you know? And we just are very frank and honest in that moment, and then we move on from there.
Definitely. And one of the things you guys did, which has definitely, since we've gone viral, is this Matin Slang. Especially that, you know, there are skits added to it as well. Where did that I guess idea come about, and how has it been on your end maintaining that?
That came about in a FaceTime call,
literally, as everything does. So just through casual conversation, I think we mentioned a word and we're like, wow, this is a very unique word, like, wouldn't it be cool to actually share this? Or we sat down there and thought, like, okay, what does it mean? We went through a whole thing process. Okay, how would you define this? And then we're like, you know what, this can be an interesting take on Say Less. And from there, we sat down, we formalized it. For me, I am more of like the creative front of Say Less, so I would do all the designing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I took some time out, I created a template, I showed it to Shanica, what do you think? Got the green light, and we went from there, to be quite honest. And then initially it started off just as definition and use in a sentence, and then we got a suggestion from one of our followers like, hey, like, why not implement a video aspect from it? And I think they were the first one to send in the video. Was it them?
No. That the person that sent it, legit, I wouldn't say they're a ghost follower. I don't think they're even from St. Martin. They just like our content. I think they're married to a St. Martin. And they legit was like, hey, it would be nice to like add a video and get your followers involved. It's like, okay, cool. And we reached out to people not expecting anything. It was like, yes, of course.
Every single person we asked was like, yes, of course, we'd love to do it. And we did not anticipate that whatsoever. So that was a breeze. We sent out the requests, we got the videos, and we applied it to our template.
Nice. Yeah, that's great because, you know, looking back, some of the things you see definitely remind you of your childhood.
For sure.
But also shows the uniqueness of St. Martin, you know, and that we have to cherish what we have, even our slangs, because there are many. There are definitely many. And what you're doing too as well in terms of the brand you're building, the podcast itself, but even your social media work, you know, I guess really again leans into part of what you have in terms of your mission or definition of your goals. And I think what you do also is something that shows that you can contribute to somebody in so many different ways. You know, it could be something that is not just in terms of maybe starting a whole foundation to, you know, get grants and but just in ways that uplift people, that they bring across information, and then I guess in your field particularly, speaking on things that are, you know, not that easy to talk about. So I think finally one of the things that I was definitely wanted to mention at the beginning, but I think it would be great for you guys to share, is again, you know, having been abroad, studied, and went through what you went through, what do you think, what support would you say is needed for the diaspora, the Spartan diaspora that's abroad, especially in Holland, in coming together, but also contributing even from away?
That's a good question. The thing is, for me, at this point, I don't know if I'm let me choose my words wisely. No, but especially, so I'm trying to think about like my experience in Holland, you know, and I think for both me and Lisa to reach to the point where we are, and the fact that Say Less Sis is Say Less Sis, is because we worked a lot on ourselves, you know. I feel like Say Less is a reflection of us and our thoughts and the things that we want to see and the conversations that we have, and I felt that came not necessarily from support, but just a lot of hard work on ourselves. And how do I formulate this? No, because especially, but you got a lot of editing to do with me. But the point I'm trying to get at, especially looking at our St. Martin community in the Netherlands, I feel like there needs to be a shift in the mentality that we have of our community as a whole. You know, I felt like being raised here and moving abroad, I realized like how much we were not very patriotic of St. Martin. We would enter certain spaces, especially in the Netherlands, and I feel like sometimes I wouldn't be too proud to be like, oh, I'm from St. Martin, but you would see everyone else from all the different islands, you know, like in any space they will unite. If they hear another person speaking their language, like, wow, you from there? Wow, you know, they connect. But whereas with St. Martiners, a lot of times in Holland, we hear somebody speaking our dialect, and we tend to go the other way, like, I want to be interact with this person. So I felt like there had to be a shift, a mental shift, where that is concerned. That is like a whole other discussion when it comes to like colonialism and, you know, the way we were brought up. So maybe saying all of that, I guess what I'm trying to say is we really need to start within the schools. We really need to start from young in terms of trying to instill that patriotism of being a St. Martin, but more so being a black St. Martin, you know, because a lot of times this Christopher Columbus story is nothing that we could relate to. You know, we really need to start looking at our heroes, our current heroes, as well, to know that, you know, nothing that we're doing now is new. People have been fighting and doing the things we've been doing for a long time, you know. So, and we have those forefathers to look to for guidance. So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Gotcha.
Please phrase the question again, because I got Shanica's answer.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I guess just plainly, what do you think is needed to better foster unity in the St. Martin diaspora abroad? And also, how can they contribute, you know, to the island even while away?
So I would definitely have to co-sign on what Shanica said. Like, we are missing a sense of patriotism from the people on our island. Living in the Netherlands, especially within the Dutch Caribbean, we're always, for lack of a better term, overshadowed by the ABC community. Like, when they're there, they take up space, they let you know who they are, where they come from, and what they intend to do in life, versus with St. Martin people in the Netherlands, we're more prone to staying in a corner, not being vocal about where we're from and how we sound. We code switch. We tend not to use our accent and stuff like this. And I think, as Shanica mentioned, if we would instill that patriotism within the school system, it would better prepare the students for standing their ground and standing strong in their identity while in the Netherlands. Something else I think that needs to be considered is the fact that mental health is going to be a factor in your journey in the Netherlands at one point or the other. So having a system in place, would be it like a psychologist, therapist, whatever the need may be, they're present. Pardon?
Also, or a mentor.
Correct, or mentor in place for the students, so when they need that help, they can reach out for them. Because in my case, I had it in school of a waiting period of like 6 months. And, you know, a lot can happen in 6 months.
Yes, definitely.
So I don't think there was anything in place, at least for me in Utrecht at the time, because I know in different cities it may vary, but for me that was something that was lacking. So I think if there was something in place for our St. Martin community to go to someone that sounds like us, that looks like us, because that's also a very, very key factor. Because I had a white Dutch man, and as much as he was a godsend, he couldn't relate to a lot of the things I was explaining to him, because he literally did not experience, you know, living in the Caribbean. So I think if we had a system in place for that for the students in the Netherlands, it can definitely help where that is concerned.
Gotcha.
And it should be a system that takes you throughout the entire college years, because I feel like a lot of times from St. Martin's standpoint, they say they offer you support, and it's like when you just reach the first 3 months and then everybody goes.
Yes, peace.
You know, and then you gotta figure it out on your own. So I feel like we need it for throughout, at least for their first 4 years in the Netherlands. Correct. I believe that's something that's truly needed.
Yeah, because you're building another foundation. You know, you have that footing here that you experience home, but you're you're in another territory. So you need that foundation so that you can really, you know, be as independent as they tell you to be. You know, so you can function in a society optimally and be your best self. Even with what you stated about, I guess, us taking up space or the lack thereof, it makes me think about something that Sana Sekou once said as it relates to, in a sense, the confidence or the national pride that we tend to have on St. Martin, which is, you know, sometimes you realize when you speak to people from other countries, when they say, I am from X island, they say it with this sort of like a base and like excitement, like from Jamaica. From, you know? But then he said he noted how when we say we're from St. Martin, there's like a downwards, like I'm from St. Martin.
Intonation.
You know,
yeah.
like I was like, whoa.
That's crazy.
You know, because in a sense we call, you know, we have been you know, they call us a friendly island. So, you know, we're not in a sense a very revolutionary type of people, etc. Very kind, forgiving, understanding, welcoming. You know, sometimes, you know, that makes you a bit soft. You know, and so I totally get it, and that's the first thing that came to mind as I listened to you guys. You know, that I guess that we have to be confident, not being afraid to say we're from St. Martin.
Yes.
You know, and that it means something. Yeah. So
Agreed.
So with that, I'd like to thank you guys so much. It was definitely a fun conversation.
Thank you so much, Rob, for having us.
No problem. I look forward to having you again soon. And much success with the fellowship, and look forward to all that Sailor Sis will be putting out.
Thank you.
Okay, so to our listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us on today's conversation here on the News Behind the News, and be sure to join us again tomorrow. Take care.